My beloved A4 just got a big brother.
Perfect.
That's right, I bought myself a 25quattro S4. Often these things get called, sort of mistakenly, a 25th anniversary S4, although that's not really the official name. But it's kind of a unique car, and I wouldn't be surprised if you've never heard of it before, so I figured why not introduce it and do a bit of a walk around to show you what makes it unique. Plus, I've only had this car for about 24 hours, so I wanted to give you my first impressions before I get too spoiled and comfortable with the fact that I actually own this thing. What's kind of neat is that for the moment, I still have my A4. I can do a little side-by-side comparisons for you here because as it turns out, there are some very small ways where the 25quattro isn't fully S4. Sadly, I will need to sell the A4 though. I just can't afford to have both and I need to roll the funds into my new project. The whole reason this car exists was that in 2006, Audi saw that they were coming up on the 25th year since they unveiled their Quattro all-wheel drive system, and they wanted to do something special for their consumers. They ended up building 250 of these, only for the American market though, which means any of the cars that you see outside of the States were definitely imported, like mine was. That's also why the speedometer reads primarily in miles per hour. But since 2006, I know at least a few of these have been parted out or written off, so it's actually kind of hard to say how many of the original 250 are still out there. But when I saw one come up for sale on Kijiji in Canada, sort of our Craigslist, I knew it was going to be hard not to buy one of these things, as long as the deal was right. So I wouldn't say that they're so special and sought after that they're actually collectible, but they are verifiably rare. Being that it is 2021 now, this car's no spring chicken. It's got 178,000 kilometers on the clock. That's just north of 110,000 miles for you Americans, and it shows. There is rust around some of the sides, some of the carbon is a little bit fading, the front bumper is a bit cracked, so it needs love, but I really want to respect what the aesthetic of the 25quattro is supposed to be and bring this all back to maybe a 9 out of 10 condition. So let's talk about what makes the outside of the 25quattro here different than your average B7 S4. And if it didn't jump right out in front of you to start with, it's those DTM bumpers. This front DTM bumper is the one that anyone who has a B7, you want this one. It came standard on this car, and technically there was a DTM edition in Sprint Blue for B7 S4s too. But those are the only factory cars that came with this. And it does look super cool. It has these side ducts. They're not functional, but they look really nice. And then this bumper deletes the fog light that's on most cars. Who cares? Do you even use those things? I never did. And it replaces it with this RS4 style diamond mesh. And then of course, the carbon lip. It looks so nice, and of course it fits great. Mine is a little bit chipped and cracked, and that's gonna need some love. But damn, that front end, that looks nice. The other thing about the bumper, and I can do a bit of a comparison here with the A4, is that the DTM front bumper has the smaller grille, the same one as the base model A4 B7s. So that's in comparison to S4s and the S-line A4s, which have, of course, a different bumper, but they have a bigger grille too. Just a little bit bigger, kind of cuts a little bit lower down and takes up more room here, but they are different. What is unique to the 25quattro though is some of the coloring. So from the factory, this would have been chrome. This has just been blacked out, but this still would have been chrome, as would have been the rings. But on the DTM grille here, it's this glossy black, which does look really nice, and a glossy black plate filler too. Continuing on the bumper DTM action here, the rear has the really cool, again, non-functional, but brake ducting, and some of the package here on the side looks really cool. And then underneath, we have the dual tip exhaust, which I believe was kind of standard for the B6 S4s. Personally, I do like the quad tip exhaust on some of the later B7 S4s, but this is still pretty cool. And what I like about the rear valence is that they have a bit of this splitter style action going on the valence. And then from the factory, it also came with a red tow hook. I know some people don't love that, but I actually do. Hey, question of the day. What do you guys think about Audi's signature oval exhaust tips, like what's on the RS4 for the B7? Do you like them? I kind of don't. I don't know what it is. I know it's sort of a unique thing for them, but like, it doesn't do it for me. Finishing up in the rear end here, these rings would have been chromed from the factory, but the previous owner put them in black. I actually don't mind them. But of course, just like the front, there is a beautiful piece of carbon on the deck lid here. Absolutely love this piece. What's kind of interesting is that they molded it to a base A4 trunk lid. And what I mean is that my car here, the A4, I swapped on an S-line trunk lid that has the integrated lip, but the 25quattro comes with what is essentially a base lid where it just has a rounded edge the whole way through, and they molded the carbon fiber wing to it. Here's something really interesting. Look at the door blades. Everybody loves how on S4s they have this really aggressive door blade. This doesn't have it. It is the understated normal one that you would find on a base A4. However, what it doesn't make up for in door blades, it does in rocker panels, because look at how this is sort of just a smooth, there's no real body lines here integrated into the side skirt on the base A4. Not the case on the 25quattro. It has a continuation, it's subtle, but a little bit aggressive and looks pretty cool. An exterior option that is a bit of a signature for the 25quattros, but one that I don't have, is a door decal. On both sides of the car, there was a sort of gradient fading 4-ring emblem in a blackish gray. Picture on screen right now. And I don't have that. That was something that the original owner could have asked the dealer to install for them, and I actually kind of like it. I would consider putting one back on the car. Just observationally here, because this is nothing to do with the 25quattro in specific, but I just wanted to call out that the mirror covers are not the solid aluminum ones, they're plastic. And that was the most common one. I think the community around S4s are trying to understand exactly which models came with the solid aluminum ones, and I don't think we know. I think some of the late production B6s did, some of the early model B7s, but in case anyone was wondering what the 25quattro has, it's plastic. As an A4 owner though, I love the fact that I have these at all. Clearly right now the car is on a different wheel and tire package, but originally these cars would have come with a full set of these. This is a multi-spoke DTM inspired, to match the rest of the car, wheel made by Ronal for Audi. And as far as I can tell, these are the same wheels that came on the titanium package cars, but in an exclusive color of silver, which makes a lot of sense considering the paint job. In terms of the current tire package though, these are pretty serious. Filling out these wheel wells quite nicely, I'll add, is that there are a set of Continental 255/35 19s, because they are holding a set of 19-inch rotor wheels. Now, I'm not totally sure if these are OEM rotor wheels from Audi or if they're replicas. I think they are real. In fact, I think these are on the TTRSs or TTSs. I don't know. If you guys know more about the rotors, sound off in the comments and kind of let me know what I have here. But I really like them, and that sort of surprises me, because I've always said that I don't love all black wheels. They sort of disappear into the wheel wells, but that's kind of not true in this car for two different ways. One is that it sort of meets the color theme of the car with the black and gray quite well, but also I never really noticed that there are machined faces on them, and it really helps, especially this outer ring here. And getting really close, you can actually see that there's a bit of a mill line face on here, and it's just enough to set these things off. I also like how there's lots of curvature on the lip and it goes into the barrel. It's a good looking wheel. One of my favorite mods that the previous owner did to this car that I very much appreciate is a set of coilovers. In fact, it's the Stasis Olin's SL coilovers nonetheless. And he went through the expense and trouble of corner balancing it too, which you really got to appreciate. There's so many cars out there that are getting modified with coilovers, and people sort of just eyeball the heights up and down, whatever looks good, right? But they're not actually tuning suspension. This guy did. He also planned for a 200-pound driver, which for me is great. I can still go up a couple of pant sizes and that'll work just fine for me. And that's what makes this car handle so well. He's also got an 034 Motorsports rear sway bar in there too, so it's actually pretty tight, and with that torsion system, very much a rear wheel drive feeling car. The very last thing to call out on the exterior is the color. So the paint is called Avus Silver, and I'm really coming to like this. This is a color that only came on the 25 Quattro and then a few other select special order or RS cars throughout history, but it is really dynamic. So pictures you see online, it makes it look like out in the sunlight it's a really light silver, and you can kind of see how that's true on the back quarter here under some LED light. But when the sun goes down, this thing gets sort of deep gray. And if you get really close to it under the right light, you can almost see hints of bluish or purple at times too. Still certainly a gray color, but wow, looks really, really good, especially with this car with the dark accents sort of in the wheels and in the tint. Continuing on into the interior of this car, there's lots of S4 goodness that I'm loving, but they did a great job putting some exclusive 25 Quattro elements in here too. Namely, they wanted to do something to play off of this Avus Silver paint, and they introduced jet gray in both leather and stitching. You can see it here on the front seats. These are the same style of seats as a typical S4, but instead of having Recaro embossed, it has Quattro to play off of the theme of this car, and they have that both in the front and the back. From what I've seen so far, other than incorporating that jet gray stitching into the seats, they also put it onto the e-brake handle, which is leather, and the shifter boot, and then also a little bit into the steering wheel itself, of which is a really nice little colorway for this car with the gray on the bottom and top, even though the top of mine is a little bit worn off. All of these cars would have originally come with one of these shift knobs. If you can't read it, it says 1 of 250 on the top there, but the face gets scratched up quite a bit, and it's kind of long and top heavy. My particular car here, it's gotten a Delrin replacement knob that's weighted from JHM. A little bit smaller, about 3 times heavier, and it just makes the shifting feel a little bit better. When I mentioned earlier that there's a little bit of RS4 in here too, I wasn't kidding. Audi went into the parts bin for the B7 RS4 and gave the 25 Quattro here the thick weave carbon on all the door cards, along the trim on the dashboard, and then also down here in the center console. Additionally, they gave us the RS4 dead pedal and pedal set too, which is just a nice sort of rubber gripped aluminum housing type of pedal cover, but still, good look. I think I'm looking forward to getting terrible gas mileage out of this V8. So in terms of the performance on the 25 Quattro, it doesn't get a boost in any way. This is still the standard 4.2 liter V8 that comes in all S4s of this vintage, but what a great starting point for performance, especially compared to the A4. I mean, you could get a bigger turbo, exhaust, tune, better fueling, maybe a few other things, and you'll work your way towards those numbers, but 340 horsepower and 302 foot-pounds of torque coming out of this engine is fantastic. In my short amount of time driving this car so far, I can tell that it's starved for air. One of the first things I'll try to do is get more air in and more air out. I feel like it's constricted and it just wants to turn into a torquey monster, but just can't right now. Also, for the sake of comparison, look how much room this engine takes up in this engine bay. I couldn't even get a pinky finger around there, whereas in the A4, I think I could stick my entire arm down through this car and touch the subframe. That is just crazy what they stuffed in there. What do you guys that have had an S4 for a long time do when you work on this thing? Are you pulling out the motor for kind of odd jobs? Do you just lay on the ground and do everything from below? I feel like I'm really gonna need a lift now. So even though the engine didn't get any extra jam for being a 25 Quattro, the driveline did. So from what I understand, the center differential uses the torsion system, and that one had a previous generation right before this car where the default bias was something like 50-50 from the front and back wheels, and then in a given circumstance it could shift up to maybe 70 or 80% to the rear. However, for the first time in this car and the same year in the RS4, there was the Type 3, the T3 torsion system, and that gave a 40-60 bias, but it could transfer up to 100% of the torque into any single axle if the right circumstance was met, which made this car feel really sporty and more of a rear-wheel drive feel car. And as far as I can tell, I think that's it. I think those are all the unique attributes of a 25 Quattro S4. Now I'm really looking forward to getting to this V8 power plant. I feel like there's going to be a learning curve for me for sure, but I'm bringing a lot of B7 chassis expertise over from the A4 and maybe it won't be so bad for me. I also have a couple of projects lined up ready to go for this thing right away, so come back to the channel soon to look for that. And also buying this car kind of sidelined another major project I had in the works, so I promise there's lots coming soon. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, please subscribe, join me next time. Thanks.